I never meant to find that letter. If I hadn't been helping Mom clean out Grandma's old desk that day, my life might still be normal. But there it was, yellowed and creased, tucked away in a forgotten drawer for 24 years. My name is Lila, and I discovered my mother never wanted me to exist. It started as a typical Saturday morning. Mom had finally decided to tackle Grandma's antique writing desk, the one that had been gathering dust in our attic since we inherited it last year. She'd asked me to help sort through the drawers while she ran errands, probably assuming there was nothing but old receipts and forgotten birthday cards inside. "Just throw out anything that looks unimportant," she'd said, waving her hand dismissively before heading out. "We'll donate the desk to charity once it's cleaned out." The first few drawers were exactly what you'd expect: dried-up pens, expired coupons, and Christmas cards from people I'd never heard of. But when I pulled open the bottom left drawer, something caught my eye. A cream-colored envelope, addressed to my grandmother in my mother's distinctive handwriting, dated 3 months before I was born. I shouldn't have opened it. I knew that even as my fingers traced the sealed edge, but something about the way it was hidden, carefully tucked beneath a stack of old magazines, made my heart race. "Dear Mom," it began in my mother's precise penmanship. "I don't know what to do anymore. Grant keeps saying we'll manage, but I can't shake this feeling that having this baby would be the biggest mistake of my life." My hands started shaking as I read on. The words blurred together, but certain phrases jumped out like neon signs. "Not ready for this responsibility. Should have gone through with the abortion. Trapped in a life I never wanted." The front door slammed downstairs, making me jump. "Lila? Are you still up there?" I quickly folded the letter, shoving it into my pocket as my mother's footsteps approached the attic stairs. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped a steel band around it and was slowly squeezing. "Find anything interesting?" She appeared in the doorway, arms full of grocery bags. I forced a smile. "Just old papers, like you said." The letter felt like it was burning through my pocket. "Well, don't waste too much time up here. Your sister's coming home from boarding school tonight, and I need help preparing her welcome dinner." Ah yes, Tessa. The wanted child. The one whose achievements covered our refrigerator door, while mine gathered dust in drawers. Suddenly, so many things made horrible sense. "Actually, Mom?" My voice cracked slightly. "Can we talk about something?" She was already halfway down the stairs. "Later, sweetie. I need to marinate the chicken for tonight. You know how particular Tessa is about her food." I pulled out the letter again after she left, reading it one more time to make sure I hadn't imagined things. But there it was, in black and white, proof that my entire existence had been a burden to her from the start. That evening, I sat through Tessa's welcome dinner in a daze, watching my mother fuss over her favorite daughter. Dad kept shooting me concerned looks across the table, but he wouldn't say anything. He never did. "Is everything okay?" he whispered when he caught me alone in the kitchen later. "You seem off." I almost told him then. The words were right there, waiting to spill out. But looking at his worried face, I realized he probably already knew. He'd always known, and he'd chosen to stay silent. The letter was still in my pocket, its edges worn from my constant touching throughout the day. I had decisions to make about confrontation, about truth, about whether some secrets should stay buried. But one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The sound of Tessa's laughter echoed through our house like wind chimes, delicate, musical, and completely fake. She'd been home from boarding school for less than 24 hours. And already our parents were hanging on her every word as if she were reciting Shakespeare. I sat at the breakfast table, pushing my eggs around my plate while clutching my mother's letter in my pocket like a talisman. The weight of it kept me grounded as Tessa regaled everyone with another story about her amazing life at Winchester Academy. And then Professor Matthews said my essay on social inequality was the most insightful piece he'd read all semester. Tessa beamed, carefully cutting her grapefruit into perfect sections. Mom practically glowed. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." "Isn't that wonderful, Grant?" Dad nodded, not looking up from his newspaper. "Very impressive." I couldn't help myself. "Funny, I wrote a paper on that same topic last semester. Got published in the university journal, actually." The silence that followed lasted exactly 3 seconds before Tessa smoothly continued. "Oh, and did I tell you about the charity gala I organized?" We raised over $10,000 for underprivileged children. 10,000. Mom gasped. That's incredible. You know, Lila, you could learn something from your sister's initiative. My fork clattered against the plate. Initiative? I've been working 2 jobs to pay my own tuition while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. Don't be dramatic, Lila. Mom sighed. We offered to help with your tuition if you'd just chosen a more practical major than psychology. Psychology isn't practical enough, but Tessa's art history degree is? Tessa's perfect smile faltered slightly. At least I'm not trying to psychoanalyze everyone all the time. Girls, Dad warned, finally looking up from his paper. Let's keep breakfast pleasant. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. You're right, Dad. Everything should always be pleasant. Heaven forbid we actually discuss anything real. Lila, Mom's voice carried that warning tone I knew too well. Your sister just got home. Can't you at least try to be supportive? The letter burned in my pocket. I wanted to pull it out, to wave it in her face and demand answers. Instead, I walked to the sink and dumped my half-eaten breakfast down the disposal. I have to get ready for work, I muttered. Oh, that reminds me. Tessa skirped. Daddy, remember that internship at the gallery we talked about? The director said she'd love to meet me next week. I froze at the sink, my back to the table. Of course, the same gallery where I'd been trying to get an interview for months. That's perfect timing, Mom said. I'm having lunch with Caroline, the director, on Wednesday. We can make it a proper introduction. The dishes in the sink rattled as I dropped them harder than necessary. Must be nice having Mom's country club connections pave your way. Lila. Mom's chair scraped back. That's enough. Just because you insist on doing everything the hard way doesn't mean. The hard way? I spun around. You mean the normal way? The way where you actually earn things instead of having them handed to you. Tessa's lower lip trembled perfectly. Why do you always have to ruin everything? I just got home. Oh, trust me, I wouldn't want to ruin your homecoming. It's clearly the highlight of Mom and Dad's year. I stormed out of the kitchen, ignoring Mom's calls to come back and apologize. As I reached the stairs, I heard Tessa's soft voice. Poor Lila. She's just jealous because she's not living up to her potential. I know, sweetie, Mom sighed. But let's not let her attitude spoil your first day back. I stopped halfway up the stairs, my hand gripping the railing so hard my knuckles turned white. Through the banister slats, I could see Tessa dabbing her eyes delicately with a napkin while Mom stroked her hair. Dad had disappeared behind his newspaper again, his usual response to any conflict. The letter in my pocket felt heavier than ever. I'd thought finding it was the worst thing that could happen. But watching this performance, knowing the truth while they all played their parts in this perfect family fantasy, that was infinitely worse. My phone buzzed, a text from my boyfriend Matteo. How's it going with the sister? I typed back, remember how you said I should give her another chance? I think I have a better idea. I wasn't trying to spy on Tessa. Really, I wasn't. But when I saw her sneaking out at midnight, phone clutched to her chest like a lifeline, something made me follow her. Maybe it was the letter still burning a hole in my pocket. Or maybe it was just years of watching her get away with everything while I got scrutinized for breathing wrong. The summer air was thick with humidity as I trailed her through our neighborhood, keeping to the shadows. She walked 3 blocks before stopping at the corner of Maple and Pine, where a black Mercedes idled under a streetlight. When she got in, I expected to see one of her preppy boarding school friends. Instead, I saw Dr. James Harrison, my mother's 45-year-old colleague from the hospital board. My stomach lurched. I snapped a quick photo with my phone, more out of instinct than any real plan. Through the car window, I could see Tessa laughing at something he said, her hand resting casually on his arm. Then the Mercedes pulled away, leaving me standing there with the kind of ammunition I'd only dreamed about. What are you doing out here? I nearly jumped out of my skin. Matteo stood behind me, looking concerned. I'd completely forgotten he was picking me up for our late-night coffee date. I showed him the photo. His eyes widened. Holy shit, he whispered. Is that Mom's favorite board member? The one she's always bragging about at dinner parties? Yeah. My hands were shaking. What do I do with this? Matteo ran a hand through his hair. Maybe talk to Tessa first? Before going nuclear. He was right, of course. He usually was. But the thought of having a rational conversation with my sister made my teeth ache. I waited up for her return, sitting in the dark kitchen. At 2 a.m., I heard the front door ease open. "Fun date?" I asked, flicking on the light. Tessa froze like a deer in headlights, then quickly composed herself. "I was just getting some air." "In Dr. Harrison's Mercedes?" The color drained from her face. "You followed me?" "Didn't have to follow far." "What the hell are you thinking, Tessa?" "He's older than Dad." "You don't understand," she hissed, glancing nervously at the stairs. "James loves me. He's going to leave his wife once I graduate." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Oh my God, you actually believe that?" "The oldest line in the book." "Stop acting like you care about me," she snapped. "We both know you're just jealous because for once you found something you could use against me." "Jealous? Of you being manipulated by a married man?" "At least someone wants me." Her voice cracked. "At least I'm not so desperate for attention that I have to work 2 jobs and get perfect grades just to feel worthy of existing." The words hit like a slap. She knew. Somehow she knew about the letter. "Mom told you," I said flatly. Tessa's expression shifted from anger to something almost like pity. "She didn't have to. I've always known I was the wanted child. Why do you think I try so hard to stay that way?" For a moment, I saw something vulnerable in my sister's eyes, a glimpse of the scared teenager beneath the perfect facade. But then she straightened her shoulders, transforming back into the golden child. "If you tell Mom and Dad about James, I'll tell them about you and that teaching assistant last year." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about? The one who helped you get published?" "I have texts proving he wrote half your paper." She smiled sweetly. "Amazing what people will tell you when you're just the stupid little sister no one takes seriously." I stared at her, this stranger wearing my sister's face. "When did you become this person? When did you become such a sanctimonious bitch?" She turned toward the stairs. "Stay out of my life, Lila. Or I'll make sure Mom and Dad know exactly who their disappointing daughter really is." After she left, I sat in the dark kitchen for a long time, my phone heavy in my hand. The photo of Tessa and Dr. Harrison glowed on the screen, a nuclear option I wasn't sure I was ready to use. But then I thought about the letter in my pocket, about years of being the unwanted child, about Tessa's smug certainty that she could manipulate everyone around her. I opened my email and started typing. My finger hovered over the send button for what felt like hours. The email to the hospital board, with the photo of Dr. Harrison and Tessa attached, sat there like a loaded gun. But something made me hesitate, maybe the same instinct that had always made me protect my sister, even when she didn't deserve it. Instead, I called my grandmother. "I need advice," I said when she answered, my voice shakier than I'd intended. "But you have to promise not to tell anyone." "Come over," she said simply. "I'll make tea." Grandma's house always smelled like vanilla and old books. As I sat at her kitchen table, watching her pour Earl Grey into delicate cups, I realized I was still clutching my phone like a lifeline. "Now then," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. "What's troubling you?" I told her everything, the letter, Tessa's affair, her blackmail attempt. With each word, the weight on my chest grew lighter, until finally I placed my phone on the table between us, the damning photo glowing on the screen. Grandma studied it for a long moment, her face unreadable. "And what do you plan to do with this?" "I don't know." I wrapped my hands around the warm teacup. "Part of me wants to destroy her perfect life like she's trying to destroy mine. But she's still your sister." "Is she?" "Because sometimes it feels like she's just another weapon Mom and Dad use to remind me I'm not good enough." Grandma reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out an envelope. "I've been waiting for the right moment to give you this. Your grandfather and I have been saving for your graduate school fund." My throat tightened as I opened it. Inside was a check that could cover 2 years of tuition. "We can't watch you struggle anymore," she said softly. "You have a chance to build your own life, away from all this toxicity." "But what about Tessa? If I leave?" "Your sister made her choices, just like your mother made hers." Grandma's voice hardened slightly. "That letter you found? I remember when Vivian wrote it. I also remember telling her that if she couldn't love you unconditionally, she didn't deserve to be your mother." My hands started shaking. "You knew? All this time." "I knew a lot of things, including how hard you've tried to earn love that should have been freely given." She reached across the table and gripped my hand. But sometimes the bravest thing we can do is walk away. My phone buzzed, a text from Tessa. "Mom's looking for you. Better not be telling tales." As if on cue, another message appeared from Mom. "Where are you? We need to discuss your attitude toward your sister." "They'll never let me go," I whispered. "They can't stop you if you don't let them." Grandma stood and walked to her desk, returning with a small key. "Your grandfather and I bought a small condo near the university last month. It's yours if you want it." I stared at the key, understanding slowly dawning. "You've been planning this. We've been watching you dim your own light for years. It's time to shine, my dear." My phone buzzed again. "Mateo, this time? Whatever you decide, I'm with you." Suddenly, the path forward seemed clearer. I picked up my phone and deleted the email draft with Tessa's photo. Then I opened a new message to my sister. "I know what James is doing is wrong, even if you don't see it yet. When you're ready to talk, really talk, I'll be there. But I won't let you use me as a punching bag anymore." I turned my phone off before she could respond and pocketed the key to my new life. "They're going to be furious," I said. Grandma smiled. "Probably. But you know what's wonderful about being an adult? You don't need anyone's permission to save yourself." As I drove home to pack my bags, I realized the letter in my pocket didn't feel so heavy anymore. Maybe because I finally understood, it wasn't just about Mom not wanting me. It was about me finally being brave enough to want something better for myself. 3 months into my new life, I'd almost convinced myself I was free. The condo near campus became my sanctuary, and between classes and my research assistant position, I barely had time to think about home. Mateo had practically moved in, filling our evenings with takeout dinners and Netflix marathons that felt wonderfully, blissfully normal. Then Tessa showed up at my door at 2 a.m., mascara streaking her cheeks. "James is married," she said, as if this was news. Like, actually married. With kids. I leaned against the doorframe, fighting the urge to say, "I told you so." "How did you find out?" "His wife came to the gallery." Tessa pushed past me into the apartment. She knew everything. She'd been reading our texts for months. She collapsed onto my couch, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. "Mom's going to kill me when this gets out. Mom doesn't have to know." Tessa laughed bitterly. "The wife is threatening to tell the hospital board. Mom's precious reputation is about to go up in flames because her daughter was stupid enough to..." She broke off, noticing the psychology textbooks on my coffee table. "You seem to be doing well." The accusation in her tone was subtle but clear. "I am doing well," I said. "For the first time in my life. Must be nice having Grandma and Grandpa bankroll your escape while leaving me to deal with everything alone. You made it pretty clear you didn't want my help. Because you were trying to control me, just like Mom. I was trying to protect you." "From what?" Tessa stood up, her vulnerability vanishing behind familiar anger. "From making my own choices? From having something that was just mine? From being manipulated by a predator who..." "Don't." She held up her hand. "Just don't. I didn't come here for a lecture." "Why did you come here?" She pulled out her phone, showing me a text thread. "James is threatening to release photos. Says if I tell anyone about us, he'll make sure everyone knows what kind of girl I really am." My blood ran cold. "Did you take photos?" "Yeah. I was stupid and in love and thought." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I need your help, Lila. Please." The irony wasn't lost on me. Here was my chance for revenge. Not just against Tessa, but against our whole family. One phone call to the hospital board and everything would implode. Mom's carefully curated image, Dad's peaceful existence, Tessa's golden child status. All of it would shatter. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Tessa's missing. If you've poisoned her against us." Another from Dad. "Please, sweetheart. Just tell us where she is." And then one from Grandma. "Remember who you are, not what they made you." Tessa was still standing there, looking lost in my carefully constructed new life. For the first time, I saw past her perfect facade to the scared teenager beneath, the other unwanted daughter, just wearing a different mask. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll help you. But we do this my way." "What's your way?" I walked to my desk and pulled out the letter, Mom's letter, that I'd kept all these months. "First, we stop pretending. About everything. No more perfect daughter, no more family secrets. We tell the truth or I walk. Mom will never. Mom doesn't get a vote this time. I handed her the letter. Read this. Then decide if you're ready to be real with me. Tessa's hands shook as she unfolded the paper. I watched her face change as she read, understanding dawning in her eyes. I didn't know, she whispered. Neither did I. But now we both do. I took back the letter. So what's it going to be? Do we keep playing their games, or do we write our own rules? She looked up at me, and for the first time since we were kids, I saw my actual sister instead of Mom's carefully crafted mini-me. I'm scared, she admitted. Good. I sat down beside her. That means you're finally being honest. Walking back into my parents' house felt like stepping into quicksand. Every family photo on the wall, every carefully arranged piece of furniture seemed designed to pull me under. Tessa followed close behind, her usual confidence replaced by nervous energy. Mom was waiting in the living room, perfectly poised despite the late hour. Dad stood by the window, pretending to watch the neighbor's cat. So kind of you to finally bring her home, Mom said, her voice arctic. Though I suppose undermining this family is your specialty lately. That's not why I'm here. I reached into my bag, fingers brushing against both letters, the one about my almost abortion and the ones from James threatening Tessa. Then why are you here? Mom stood, smoothing her silk robe. To cause more drama? To poison your sister against us like you've poisoned yourself? Mom. Tessa started, but Mom cut her off. Sweetheart, go upstairs. Whatever lies your sister has told you. James Harrison is blackmailing me, Tessa blurted out. He has photos. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad finally turned from the window, his face ashen. Mom's perfect mask cracked for just a moment before reforming. Don't be ridiculous, she said. James is a respected member of the hospital board. He would never. I pulled out my phone, playing the voice message James had left for Tessa. Either you keep quiet about everything, or these photos go public. How do you think Mommy Dearest will handle that scandal? Turn that off, Mom snapped, but her hands were shaking. This is obviously some sort of manipulation. Like the kind you're so good at? I pulled out her letter to Grandma. Should we talk about manipulation, Mom? Should we discuss how you've spent 24 years pretending to love a daughter you never wanted? Dad stepped forward. Lila, that's enough. No, it's not enough. Tessa's voice cracked. Nothing's ever enough with this family. We're either perfect or we're nothing. We gave you everything, Mom said, but her voice had lost its edge. Both of you. Everything we never had. You gave us conditions I cut in. Performance requirements. Love with footnotes and fine print. That's not true. Then prove it. I laid both letters on the coffee table. Prove you care more about your daughters than your reputation. Help us deal with James. Be actual parents for once. Mom picked up her letter, hands trembling. I was young and scared. I didn't mean. You meant it enough to write it down, I said quietly. Meant it enough to treat me like an obligation for my entire life. While making me feel like I had to be perfect just to justify existing, Tessa added. Do you know how exhausting that is? Mom sank onto the couch, the letters crumpling in her grip. I was trying to give you both your best chance. Everything I did was about you, I finished. Your image. Your success. Your perfect family fantasy. That's when Mom did something I'd never seen before. She started crying. Not elegant, controlled tears, but ugly, racking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and broken. I don't know how to fix this, she whispered. Neither do we, Tessa said, moving to sit beside her. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we can stop trying to fix things and just be real instead. My phone buzzed, a new message from James. Time's up. Hope you're ready for everyone to see who you really are. Tessa's phone chimed too, then Mom's. Dad's phone started ringing. He's releasing everything, Tessa breathed, her face draining of color. The photos, the texts, everything. Mom stood up, wiping her eyes, her walls visibly rebuilding. We need to contain this. I'll call our lawyers. No, I said firmly. No more containing, no more controlling. We face this together, or we don't face it at all. You don't understand what this will do to our family, Mom pleaded. This family is already broken, I replied. Maybe it needs to shatter completely before we can build something real from the pieces. The phones kept buzzing as our carefully constructed world began to crumble around us. But for the first time, standing in that living room with all our secrets exposed, we weren't pretending anymore. Sometimes rock bottom is just another word for foundation. The hospital board meeting room felt like a courtroom, with James Harrison sitting at one end of the long table and our family at the other. Mom's lawyer shuffled papers beside her while Dad stared at his hands. Tessa hadn't stopped shaking since we walked in. I wasn't supposed to be here, Mom had made that clear. But when Tessa grabbed my hand in the parking lot and whispered, "Please don't leave me alone," I knew I couldn't walk away. "Let's keep this civil," James said, his smile as practiced as a surgeon's scalpel. "I'm sure we can reach an arrangement that benefits everyone." "Benefits everyone?" Tessa's voice cracked. "Like how you benefited from manipulating an 18-year-old? Tessa, Mom hissed, but I cut her off. "No, let her speak. Isn't that what this meeting is about? Finally telling the truth." James's smile didn't waver. "The truth is subjective, especially when dealing with unstable young women seeking attention." Funny, I pulled out my phone, because these voice messages seem pretty objective to me. The color drained from his face as I played the recordings. Not just his threats to Tessa, but conversations spanning months, carefully documenting his manipulation. "Where did you get those?" he demanded. "From me," Tessa said quietly. "I gave them to Lila the night everything fell apart. Because she was the only one who ever really tried to protect me." Mom's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. "Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me?" Tessa asked. "Or would you have told me to keep quiet to protect the family image?" The silence that followed was answer enough. James leaned forward. "Those recordings were obtained without consent. They're inadmissible." "In court, maybe," I interrupted. "But the hospital board might feel differently. Or the press. Or your wife." "You're bluffing. Try me." I met his gaze. "You threatened my sister. Did you really think I wouldn't have a backup plan?" That's when Tessa did something none of us expected. She stood up, pulled an envelope from her bag, and placed it on the table. "What's that?" Mom asked. "My trust fund paperwork." Tessa's hands were steady now. "I'm signing it over to a foundation for young victims of abuse." "All of it?" "You can't," Mom started. "I can. And I am." Tessa looked at James. "You can release whatever photos you want. I'm done being afraid of the truth." "Tessa, think about your future." Dad finally spoke up. "I am thinking about my future. For the first time, I'm thinking about what I want, not what everyone else wants from me." I felt a surge of pride so strong it nearly knocked me over. This wasn't the sister who'd shown up at my door in tears. This was someone new, someone stronger. "You're making a mistake," James said, but his confidence was cracking. No, I stood beside Tessa. "The mistake was thinking you could pit this family against itself. We might be broken, but we're learning to put ourselves back together. Without men like you using our cracks against us." Mom slowly rose from her chair. For a moment, I thought she would try to stop us. Instead, she turned to James. "The board meeting is at 3. I suggest you have your resignation ready before I present these recordings." "Vivian, that's Dr. Matthews to you." She gathered her papers. "And if you ever come near my daughters again, there won't be a hospital in this country that will let you near their patients." As we walked out of that room, something shifted between us, like tectonic plates finally settling into new positions. Mom's hand found mine, then Tessa's, forming a chain I never thought possible. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For everything." "We know," Tessa and I said together. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a start. Sometimes the strongest foundations are built on the ruins of what came before. 6 months after James Harrison's resignation, I stood in my grandparents' backyard, watching Tessa hang fairy lights for my graduation party. She'd moved into their guest house while starting community college, choosing her own path for the first time in her life. A little higher on the left, I called out, holding the ladder steady. "Perfectionist," she teased, but adjusted the lights anyway. Mom called again this morning. Asked if we're coming to Sunday dinner. The invitation didn't surprise me anymore. What surprised me was how much I wanted to say yes. "Maybe," I said. "If she sticks to her therapy appointments." "She is, you know. Dad too." Tessa climbed down, brushing off her hands. "I found him crying in his study last week. Actually crying. Said he was sorry for being a coward all those years. The old letter sat in my desk drawer now, less a weapon and more a reminder of how far we'd come. Mom had asked to burn it together, but I wasn't ready for that. Some scars need to stay visible so we don't forget how we got them. Mateo arrived with the cake, and soon the backyard filled with people. My professors, Tessa's new friends from college, even a few carefully chosen relatives. Mom and Dad showed up last, hovering uncertainly at the edge of the crowd until Grandma pulled them into the fold. "Your mother brought your favorite chocolate mousse," Grandma whispered to me. "Made it herself. Nearly burned down her kitchen trying." I watched Mom arrange dessert plates with trembling hands, noticed how she'd stopped wearing her surgical scrubs like armor. She looked smaller somehow, more human. "Remember when you first found that letter?" Mateo asked, sliding his arm around my waist. "You wanted to burn everything down." "I wanted justice," I corrected him. "I just didn't know what that looked like yet." Tessa clinked her glass, calling everyone's attention. Speech time. As the formerly horrible little sister, I think I've earned the right to embarrass the graduate. Laughter rippled through the crowd, but I saw the tears in her eyes. "Lila taught me something this year," she continued. "She taught me that real strength isn't about being perfect or proving your worth. It's about being brave enough to be broken and still choose love anyway." Mom wiped her eyes quietly in the back. Dad reached for her hand. "To my sister," Tessa raised her glass, "who saved me by saving herself first." Later, as the party wound down, Mom found me by the dessert table. "I've been trying to write you a new letter," she said softly, "to replace the old one. But everything I write feels inadequate." "Maybe that's okay," I replied. "Maybe we stop trying to fix the past and just focus on now." She nodded, then pulled something from her purse, a set of keys. "The beach house," she explained. "The one you and Tessa loved as kids. I'm signing it over to both of you. No conditions, no expectations. Just a place that can be yours." I stared at the keys, remembering summers spent hiding from family tension in that old house by the sea. "We can't buy back the past, Mom." "I know." She placed the keys in my hand. "But maybe we can build a different future." As the last guests left, I found myself sitting on the porch swing with Tessa, just like we used to do as kids before everything got complicated. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't found that letter?" I asked. "Sometimes." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "But I think we needed everything to break apart so we could put it back together, right?" In my pocket, the beach house keys pressed against the outline of Mom's old letter. Two pieces of metal and paper, each holding different versions of our family story. "Want to go check out our new beach house tomorrow?" I asked. "Only if you promise not to be a responsible adult the whole time." "Deal." Above us, the fairy lights twinkled like stars, casting soft shadows that made everything look a little magical, a little possible. Not perfect, but real. And maybe that was the better kind of justice after all. Justice after all. Justice after all. Justice after all.